Hey guys, this is Fein here for Advanced Design Sketching. Before I start answering questions, I'd just like to give a shout out to Hector Silva for founding this group and inviting me to make this video. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of sketching so you guys have something to look at while I'm talking. And yeah, hope you find this video enjoyable. Let's get started. Alright, so the first question says, why is design sketching important as a student? So design sketching is really just a form of communication. When you're a designer, in charge of creating new forms, surfaces, technology, mechanisms, and solutions to various other problems, it's vitally important that you're on the same page as your professors, other designers, clients, or, whoever you're communicating back and forth with. Any miscommunication in this phase can cause big issues and, kill your efficiency. So if you were to try and imagine some sort of new 3D shape, something a little more complex than a sphere or a cube or some sort of basic geometric shape like that, and spend 30 minutes trying to describe every detail of this shape to another designer, talking about every single surface change, the size of this, the colors, materials, and textures. No matter how good of a designer they are or how good you're at explaining, at the end of that time period, if you ask them to recreate what you were describing to them, what they're imagining is going to be slightly different than what you had in your head originally. Whereas if you were to just spend 10, 15 seconds, doodling on a napkin the shape that you had in your head, if you're good at design sketching, you can communicate pretty accurately that form that you had in your head initially. So just that example really just shows how powerful sketching is as a communication tool. Alright, so the next question is asking, why should you get good at it? Well, besides all the points I made in my first response, you always want your sketches to add to the design. You never want it to be a distraction. If you're pinning up a bunch of drawings on the wall for presentation or critique, the last thing you want is for the feedback to be based solely on the drawings themselves. You don't want them to be talking about different line weights, different texture, different rendering techniques. You want them to be focusing on how the designs themselves could be better, how they could be more efficient. And efficiency is really the main answer. Why should you get good at it? If you can spend 5 minutes and do a clean drawing that, communicates your idea very well, you're saving yourself time, and you can go through more iterations in the same day than it would take you if you had to spend 20 or 30 minutes to get to that same level. So at the end of the day, efficiency is the main reason why you should get good at design sketching. Alright, number 3 says, how does prototyping play a role with the sketching process? Well, prototyping is very important as a designer because it really allows you to see where you need to improve or change the design. A lot of times for me, if I'm doing something like a vehicle, if I were to try and model what I'm drawing right now in 3D or make a model of that out of foam or whatever, there would be tons of tiny changes I would have to make. The surfacing probably wouldn't work out in real life. I would have to add space in other places so there would be movement for the wheels. I'd have to figure out how would the person interact with this. How would they be able to get in and out? Would they be able to reach the steering wheel? And these sort of problems are the stuff that are very difficult to work out when you're only working on paper. The downside of prototyping is it takes much longer to get a 3D model to build this in physical space. So in the end of the day, it just comes down to knowing when you need to jump out of 2D and move on to something in 3D, or vice versa. When you have to go back to sketching to rough out ideas quickly and then to test them out and see what's going to actually work. Alright, last but not least, if you were to give one piece of advice to young students, what would it be? Well, I wish I could go back to my freshman year of college and tell myself not to skimp on the fundamentals you're learning that year. It may not be the most exciting stuff you're doing then, But you need to know how to draw 100 cubes. You need to know how to do all those geometric shapes and have them work in the same scene in the same perspective grid. So I would recommend taking 50, 100 sheets of just cheap printer paper, stapling them together, making some sort of cheap, dirty notebook that you won't feel bad about being sloppy in, and just filling it up front and back with cubes and other geometric shapes. You won't have to worry about having any art block of what am I going to draw. You just get that perspective in and get that mileage down as early as possible. Because by the time you want to solve serious design issues, you don't want to have to worry about how am I going to make this perspective work? How can I draw this idea that I have in the head? All right, guys, I'm an hour and a half into this tractor hot rod rendering thing I started. I just have too much other work right now. I'm going to have to call it a day right now. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. If you guys have any questions now, feel free to shoot me an email, send me a message over Instagram. I'm always happy to speak to other designers and help out when I can. Thanks again to Hector, and I'll see you guys later. Keep on sketching.